The sentence reached me through the half-open door like a blade slipping between my ribs. My wife's voice was calm, almost effortless, as she told a man I had never seen before that she was single. I stood frozen in the bright corridor of the downtown medical center, holding 2 paper cups of coffee and the small bunch of yellow tulips I had bought to surprise her, while the woman I had loved for 11 years erased our marriage with one word. Single. In that instant, every promise we had made, every morning we had shared, and every struggle we had survived seemed to collapse beneath my feet. Before I tell you what happened next, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel if you believe in kindness, forgiveness, hope, and second chances, because sometimes the truth that breaks a heart is also the truth that teaches it how to heal. My name is Callum Mercer, and until that Thursday afternoon, I believed my marriage to Laurel was tired but unbreakable. We had met in a small bookstore in Portland when I accidentally knocked a stack of travel guides onto her shoes. She laughed instead of getting angry, helped me gather the books, and teased me for holding a guide to Paris upside down. 3 years later, we married beneath a white wooden gazebo overlooking the river. We were not wealthy, but we built a life that felt rich in smaller ways. Sunday pancakes, long drives through the countryside, notes tucked into lunch bags, and dancing badly in the kitchen while the radio played. Laurel had a way of making ordinary rooms feel warm. She remembered birthdays, rescued injured birds, and cried whenever elderly couples held hands in public. I trusted her more deeply than I trusted myself. Then life began shaving pieces from us. My construction company lost 2 major contracts, and I started working longer hours to keep our home. Laurel left her job at a community arts center after her mother developed a serious heart condition. For nearly a year, she drove across town every day to manage appointments, medication, groceries, and paperwork. I thought I was helping by staying focused on money. I paid bills, repaired the leaking roof, and kept telling myself that providing was the same as being present. Laurel stopped laughing as often. She ate alone many afternoons because I came home late. When she tried to talk about fear or exhaustion, I usually offered solutions instead of listening. I would tell her we could hire help later, that things would settle down soon, or that she needed to rest. I never noticed how lonely a person could become while standing only a few feet away. The medical center was flooded with clean daylight through tall glass windows. I had finished a job early and decided to surprise Laurel after her mother's cardiology appointment. Her mother had already left with a neighbor, but Laurel had texted that she needed to remain for some paperwork. I found her on the 2nd floor near a private consultation room. As I approached, I heard a man ask if she had anyone supporting her at home. There was a pause, and then Laurel replied that she was single and handled things by herself. I could not see her face from where I stood. I only saw the stranger's gray suit and Laurel's pale blue coat reflected faintly in the glass. My hands began trembling so hard that coffee spilled over the lids. I wanted to step inside and demand an explanation, but humiliation pinned me in place. I quietly set the flowers on a bench, turned around, and walked away before either of them could see me. Outside, the afternoon sun felt brutally bright. People crossed the street carrying shopping bags and talking into phones, while my entire life seemed to move underwater. I sat in my truck for nearly an hour, replaying the sentence. I wondered how long she had been lying. I pictured secret messages, hidden meetings, and another life she had created behind my back. Every recent moment became suspicious. The times she had turned her phone face down. The afternoons she said she needed space. The way she had stopped wearing her wedding ring after her fingers began swelling from stress. I had accepted every explanation because love had made trust feel natural. Now trust felt like stupidity. When Laurel returned home before sunset, daylight still filled the living room. She found me sitting at the dining table with my untouched coffee and the tulips lying between us like evidence. Her face changed the moment she saw them. She asked why I had gone to the medical center without telling her. I asked who the man was. She looked confused at first, then frightened. I repeated the exact words I had heard and told her I wanted the truth, not another excuse. Laurel lowered herself slowly into the chair across from me. Her eyes filled, but I was too hurt to be softened by tears. I accused her of pretending our marriage did not exist. I asked whether there was someone else, whether she had grown ashamed of me, and whether all the years between us had meant anything. She tried to explain, but anger made me hear only fragments. The stranger was a counselor. The appointment had not been for her mother. The question about being single had been part of an assessment. None of it made sense to me. I asked why a married woman would tell a counselor she was single unless she wanted to be. Laurel pressed both hands against the table and finally said the words that silenced me. She said that legally she was married, but emotionally she had been living alone for almost 2 years. The truth struck harder than the lie. Laurel did not accuse me of cruelty. That would have been easier to fight. Instead, she described the quieter wounds I had refused to notice. She reminded me of the morning her mother was rushed into surgery and I stayed at a worksite because a concrete delivery could not be delayed. She told me about sitting in the hospital cafeteria with shaking hands, calling me 3 times and receiving only a message that said I would phone later. She spoke about the anniversary dinner she prepared while I worked until evening and returned too exhausted to eat. She described the many afternoons when she tried to tell me she was overwhelmed and I answered emails while nodding. She said I had never stopped loving her, but I had stopped making her feel seen. In the counselor's office, when asked whether she had a partner actively supporting her, she had answered according to how her life felt rather than what our marriage certificate said. That I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to list the mortgage payments, the insurance premiums, the repaired furnace, and every sacrifice I had made. But as Laurel cried in the golden daylight, I finally understood that I had been measuring love in expenses while she had been starving for presents. I had worked to protect our life so relentlessly that I had abandoned the person at its center. Still, understanding did not erase the pain of hearing her call herself single. I asked why she had not told me how close she was to breaking. She said she had, again and again, but I only listened for problems I could fix with money or schedules. Her sadness had become background noise to me. Then came the unexpected truth that shattered what remained of my certainty. Laurel had not been meeting the counselor about an affair or even about leaving me. She had been referred there after fainting in her mother's kitchen. Medical tests showed severe exhaustion, anxiety, and symptoms of depression. The counselor was helping her apply for a caregiver support program and temporary financial assistance. During the assessment, applicants without dependable household support received priority. Laurel had said she was single because, in the practical reality of caregiving, she had no one she could rely on consistently. She hated herself for saying it, but she also believed it was honest. That I looked at the woman across from me and saw how thin she had become. There were shadows beneath her eyes I had blamed on poor sleep. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for a tissue. I realized I did not know when she had last attended an appointment for herself, eaten a proper lunch, or taken a full day away from responsibility. I had noticed the unpaid electricity notice on the counter sooner than I had noticed my wife disappearing inside her own life. Shame settled over me, heavy and undeniable. Laurel said she had not decided to leave, but she could no longer continue as we were. She needed help, counseling, and room to recover. More painfully, she needed to know whether I loved her as a person or merely needed her as part of the life I had built. I did not beg her to forgive me immediately. For once, I did not offer a quick solution. I sat there and listened. The daylight moved slowly across the floor as she told me everything she had swallowed for years. Some memories made me wince. Others made me cry. When she finished, I admitted that I had failed her, not because I had stopped caring, but because I had convinced myself that good intentions excused emotional absence. The following morning, under a pale blue sky, I called my business partner and reduced my schedule. It cost me a major contract, but for the first time, I understood that losing work was not the same as losing a life. I arranged for a professional caregiver to help Laurel's mother 3 afternoons each week. I attended the next counseling session with Laurel, not to defend myself but to learn. The counselor asked me to describe how Laurel experienced love. I opened my mouth and realized I did not know. That question haunted me more than any accusation. Healing did not happen through a single apology. Laurel remained cautious. Some mornings, she barely spoke. She had heard promises before, and she needed evidence that would survive inconvenience. I began with small acts that required attention rather than money. I accompanied her to medical appointments. I cooked lunch before she had to ask. I turned off my phone when she spoke. I learned the names of her mother's medications and the details of her treatment plan. I began therapy on my own and confronted the fear that had driven me into endless work. My father had lost our childhood home after being laid off, and I had spent my adult life believing financial instability was the greatest danger a family could face. I had never understood that emotional abandonment could happen even in a house with every bill paid. Several weeks later, Laurel invited me to walk with her through the riverside park where we had taken our wedding photographs. It was a clear, cool afternoon, and sunlight shimmered on the water. She told me she had begun wearing her wedding ring again, not because everything was repaired, but because she had finally seen me changing without demanding praise. She admitted that calling herself single had frightened her too. Hearing the word aloud had revealed how far she had drifted from our marriage. She did not want to live as a single woman beside a husband who loved her from a distance. She wanted partnership, honesty, and the freedom to say she was hurting before she reached a breaking point that I told her I could not promise never to fail again. I could only promise that I would no longer hide behind being busy, tired, or responsible. I would ask questions, accept uncomfortable answers, and remain present even when I could not solve anything. Laurel took my hand, but she did not offer instant absolution. She said forgiveness would be a road, not a doorway. I told her I was willing to walk it as slowly as she needed. Months passed. Her mother's condition stabilized, and Laurel returned part-time to the arts center. She began painting again in a sunny corner of our spare room. Our marriage became less polished but more honest. We argued sometimes, but we no longer buried pain beneath silence. Once a week, we ate lunch together at the kitchen table without phones. Every Sunday afternoon, we visited her mother together. I learned that love was not proved by dramatic gestures alone. It lived in remembering an appointment, noticing exhaustion, asking a second question, and staying when the answer was difficult. On our 12th anniversary, I took Laurel back to the medical center. She was confused until we reached the second-floor corridor where I had overheard her. On the same bench, I placed a fresh bunch of yellow tulips. I told her that this was the place where I thought my marriage had ended, but it became the place where my blindness ended instead. Laurel cried and rested her forehead against mine. She said the truth had broken both of us, but perhaps we had needed to break the version of our marriage that was slowly destroying us. Before we left, an elderly man struggled to guide his wife's wheelchair through the heavy glass doors. Laurel and I stepped forward together, holding the doors and helping them outside. The old woman smiled and thanked us, then glanced at our joined hands. In that small moment, I understood the quiet miracle of second chances. They are not granted because love never fails. They are granted when people become brave enough to see the failure, name it, and choose differently. Please leave a meaningful comment about what you believe matters most in a marriage: providing for someone, being emotionally present, or learning how to balance both. Your words may help someone recognize the pain their partner has been too exhausted to explain. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. That afternoon, Laurel and I returned home while sunlight streamed through the windows and illuminated the kitchen floor. She turned on the old radio, the same one we used to dance beside when we were younger. I reached for her hand, expecting hesitation, but she stepped closer. We moved slowly, imperfectly, surrounded by unpaid work, unfinished healing, and a future neither of us could guarantee. Yet for the first time in years, Laurel was not alone, and I was not merely standing beside my wife. I was finally with her.